Hey everyone, Raul from Enforcer here. I think we're going to have people flooding through, but let's just get going with intros. So thanks so much for joining. Let's get started. So my name is Raul. I'm the director for Enforcer Australia, New Zealand. And for those of you who are joining our first webinar, we've been running a series of webinars based on some main topics of interest and talking points that we hear from partners most often. Last month was all about service differentiation and how to productize your services. And then that leads on to frameworks. So we hear a lot of questions from partners about which framework should I align to, what are the best practices with regards to helping my customers align to certain frameworks. So for that reason, we chose to focus on ISO 27001 today. Just in terms of the webinar's goals, we'll be looking at how it helps protect your business, and the most important, how it helps you build customer trust. We'll also talk through some best practices around getting and maintaining your certifications. And then, since from an enforcer perspective, we'll focus on how this relates to keeping your clients' Microsoft 365 environments secure and compliant. So without further ado, let's introduce our guest speaker here. So Jason, I'll let you intro yourself.
Thanks, Raul. Thanks, Nathan. Thanks, everyone, for having me. I'm Jason, for those that don't know me, Managing Director at ISO 365. Really looking forward today to talking to everybody about, how ISO 27001 looks within their business. Keen to answer a lot of questions, hopefully, if we get that from the audience. And yeah, just keen to have a good, informative webinar with you guys.
And Nathan, over to you.
Thanks, Raul. I am the head of cloud enablement for Australia and New Zealand, so very much a Microsoft expert, so very good on the 365 side of things, as well as obviously the Enforcer expert.
Great. Bit of housekeeping. Naturally, the first question we always get asked, yes, this session is recorded. We'll send that through afterwards along with Jason's contact details. That we're changing up the format today. We're trying something, it's a bit more like what someone might call a fireside chat. So no death by PowerPoint. It's meant to be interactive. It's lots of questions that I've saved up from partners, mostly to cover with Jason, some with Nathan. But I'd encourage you guys to ask questions using the chat or the Q&A throughout. That would be an amazing kind of use of time, but also we can save some time at the end for questions if necessary as well. So if we start at the beginning, talking about the ISO fundamentals, Jace, there's a lot of frameworks out there. If I look at our template library in Enforcer, Nathan's building this ever-growing list of templates. Why does ISO 27001 matter to MSPs?
It's a great question. It's obviously a really hot topic, and stays a hot topic. 27001 it's really important for MSPs because it's what your customers know. Okay, it's a framework or a standard that's obviously been written. Everyone knows about 27001. It's important for MSPs because their clients as well are the ones that know about it, right? So when they're looking for assurance from their upstream providers, they're looking for an even baseline. What can we compare everybody? So mainly it's about building that credibility and that trust with your clients, and then hopefully being able to get some new business, and that's where the prospect side comes in and building the trust with your prospects.
Okay, I mean, if I think of Enforcer, for us, a MSP or a TSP that's trying to consolidate around the Microsoft stack is a good fit for yourself. Which MSPs or TSPs can really benefit from ISO?
Well, of course, I'm going to say all MSPs and TSPs can benefit from ISO, right? It's the one thing that can sit across the top of any control base. So there's heaps of different control systems that everyone's going to be aligning to. Essential 8, whether it's NIST, whether it's CIS, you name it. There's a control base out there. 27001 can sit over the top as that information security, risk management system, if you want to call it that. And so it's relevant to everybody because as I was saying before, Raul, it's something that the clients know about, and it's something that they're asking for more and more. They have been for the last 10 years, but it used to be for more that enterprise kind of level. But what we're seeing now over the course of the last 7 years, especially, is that it's starting to really trickle down to, even if you've started an MSP, yesterday, in order for you to be able to play in some of these areas, you need to be able to give that assurance, right? And one way to give that assurance is to, do an implementation, get yourself certified, get a nice certificate and a nice logo that you can use, and that will then help you drive business as well.
So you've touched on some other frameworks, so that's quite interesting. How do you work around the fact that, the partners might have customers that are asking them about Essential 8, some are talking about the CIS controls. How do you suggest ISO interacts with the other frameworks that partners might be under pressure to align to?
The best part is that it actually doesn't matter from an ISO perspective which control base you choose. So I know of plenty of MSPs, even ones that work with us, that are completely different and have completely different methodologies when it comes to their security. Some are all in Essential 8, some are all in on NIST, some are a hybrid. They've made their own stack that they believe is the most secure, and their clients trust them. But then, like I said before, 27001 is that wrapper that sits across the top of whatever control base you're implementing, and then it allows for that external presence to come in, audit, and then obviously assess you for your competence or for your alignment to the standard.
Okay. So, people might be shocked to learn we did do some prep. So when we were prepping this yesterday, you were talking about one of the main differentiators being how customers, that this can be helped to build customer trust. Customers are sometimes then audited themselves. Can you explain a bit more about what that differentiator is for an MSP if they say, yes, we are ISO certified?
Yeah, so it kind of stems from the fact that customers that are or prospects, let's call them that are assessing a new MSP, or have gone to tender, or have invited a bunch of MSPs to come in, they need to hit a certain baseline, and they need to make sure that whoever they're inviting in to look after their business is already at a very secure level. Okay, one way to tick that box, if we want to call it that, is to achieve your 27001, but that doesn't guarantee that you're going to win the work, right? That's just what we call that ticket to play. So I encourage everyone that I speak to put this on their roadmap, so that if and when they get to a point where they're up against a competitor that has it, they don't miss out on the work. Okay, that's what I'm really strong about, being prepared. Clients will always look for that assurance, because now they're needing to get their own cyber insurance and things like that. And so it all comes down to a risk profile for that client. So when an insurer is assessing, not the MSP for insurance, but one of their clients for insurance, because, let's face it, everyone wants to go and get that cyber insurance piece. They then need that guarantee coming, through their supply chain. And as we all know, insurers will build a risk profile based on your business. And if they're transacting with an MSP that can't verify a lot of their controls, that's when things can start to become a little bit risky for the clients, and that's when we see prospects drop off.
Okay, so not having that certification can lead to prospects dropping off. You don't make it past that first.
I've definitely seen it. I guarantee everyone on this call has probably seen it in their own way, shape, or form. They've either been a part of it, or if they're certified on the call, they've probably won a deal based off it. It's definitely happening, and it won't stop.
I was speaking to a partner the other day. They might be on here. They were talking about the way the industry is changing. There's more stick coming into play with regards to not being compliant to frameworks. You said ISO used to be enterprise only, but now that's changing. What is it in your mind that's changing?
What's changing is when I was first introduced to it, going on, I think it's about 8 or so years ago, it was more for that enterprise level where, it was a government tender, for instance, that I had first seen it. And I had to figure out, okay, what is this thing? Like, most people probably on the call at some point have done. And so I've obviously now built a career off it. But it's no longer just government entities asking about it, which was the type of work we were going for back then. What we're now seeing is that even, an everyday SME, they still need assurance from our MSPs, right? And so even if you're not playing in that full enterprise space, or going for government agencies or government tenders and things like that, your clients at some point are still going to want the same assurances, and it's their right to ask for that. Really, they want to make sure that whoever is looking after them is as secure as possible. I always use the analogy that your clients may love you. You may be the best people that they've ever met, and they love you to bits. But the moment that they need something like a 27,001 assurance from you as an MSP is the moment that relationship can start to flex and can get strained as well. Right. So it's really important to stay ahead of it rather than trying to, solve the problem when it comes.
Got it. Okay. Well, look, there's quite a few people on the webinar. They've kindly given up their time, so you can assume they know that ISO is important. So the next stage is, well, Jace, how do I actually go about getting this certification?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's one of those things where you need to start by either going for it yourself, as in doing a self-implementation, or you partner with somebody. Okay, there's obviously enough people on the call that I've spoken to in the past as well. Some are even clients. That is something that we do, right? But this isn't about me. It's about how us as an industry can actually achieve this 27,001 in order for us to all succeed. So the best way to start, I suppose, is figure out if you're going to self-implement, or figure out if you're going to partner with somebody, and then that is your two different forks in the road. Could have a conversation for an hour on both sides, but to answer your question in a short way, it is about picking self-implementing versus partnering with someone.
What are the common pitfalls or mistakes that you've seen that you can kind of help people on this webinar avoid?
Yeah, it's a good one. So there's a lot of people that come into 27,001 and just focus on the technical controls, right? There are in fact 4 areas in the annex that everyone needs to be aware of. You've got organizational controls, people controls, physical perimeter and security controls, and then you've got the technological controls. So 27,001 isn't just about those technological controls, although that's all you hear about on LinkedIn or on the media or all the rest of it. You've also got the management clauses, which is an ISO specific thing, which is the front half of the ISO standard. But without getting too technical on the ISO side, there's always there's always the same risks that generally pop up. It's from a non-technical perspective, it's things like onboarding and offboarding checklists. From a HR perspective, a lot of people fall down. Then you kind of, you go into your physical security perspective, and, you've got those that are hyper aware and, no one can get in the front door. And then you've got those MSPs that are like, oh yeah, technically someone could walk straight off the street, up the stairs, into the elevator, up into our floor and straight in. And I'll be honest with you as well, that's actually happened before. So, the physical security side is really important too. And then you've got the technological side, right? And, I suppose a lot of the people on the call here today are interested in how technology can solve a lot of those technical controls. There are tons of, platforms and systems that can help us do that. And there's some common characteristics there as well, especially around the 365 stack, and things like application control and those kind of things.
Okay. Well, this, correct me if this is a bit ignorant on this, but a lot of our partners would then use Enforcer to say uplift their client's 365 environment to be Essential 8 compliant. Is that also how you'd advise MSPs to help with their customers' ISO compliance? Like how does the commercialization of it work?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. So look, Enforcer as a tool, I've come across it many times. It solves a bunch of problems. Does it solve every control in the standard? No, we all know that, right? Does it solve its handful of really important ones? Of course it does. So, things like being able to manage your Intune, your Entra, those kind of things are really important when we do our gap analysis workshop. But what I will say from the client side to answer that question, Raul, is that you can start to prepare your clients in the best way possible. They don't need to go through their own 27001 certification. They may never have a requirement to do so, but you can replicate what you build internally for your 27001, knowing that they can get to a certain standpoint or a certain baseline. If and when they ever did need to pull that trigger, they could, commission an audit and they could get it audited and then certified. Otherwise, at best, there's no problem with saying that, one of your clients are aligned. I've got a few MSPs that choose to do that as well. They build their service package around, their service offering, I should say, around being aligned to being able to be one day certified to 27001. It's a real thing.
It's almost setting your customers up for something that they might then need in future as well.
Correct, exactly. And like I said, it may not be something that that every client needs to go through. There's nothing saying that, but being able to bring everybody up to a certain level is what everyone's talking about at the moment. Raising the bar, lifting the tide, all of these really good terms. It's about us getting to a point where we're all as secure as we can possibly be, and we're all learning from each other.
Once you've got yourself ISO certified, like what would be the need to? How would you continually maintain compliance, or is it kind of a one-time project? You're done.
So it's a great question. So ISO is definitely not a one-time project. For anyone on the call that's looked into it, you'll probably notice that it's more I like to call it a 3-year cycle. Okay. So in the first year, you do your implementation and then you sit your certification audit. That's made up of 2 separate audits, what they call stage 1 and then stage 2. It's at the stage 2 audit that you ultimately get recommended for certification. Your audit report then goes to a certification manager that gets vetted and gets looked at. And they will be the ones to ultimately award that certification. And that's pretty much year 1 complete. That's when everybody celebrates. They get on LinkedIn. Hey, we've done it. We've got it. Awesome. Update some graphics, etc. But that's when the real fun starts, in my opinion, right? Because 12 months after that date, the auditors will be back to do a surveillance audit. And a surveillance audit is about half the time of your first year certification audit. So it's a little bit shorter, but they will come back. And if they're looking at risks from 12 months ago and they're looking at, no updated controls, nothing's moved, no corrective action, you've done no internal audit, you've had no management review, they're going to hit you with a bunch of non-conformities. And if you don't close them off, then that's when we see MSPs going into that suspended status. And there have been some that have done exactly that. They self-implement, they get the cert, they don't realize that they need to manage something ongoing, and then they fall into trouble 12 months later, and then it's a whole mess to unravel that.
Understood. Okay, well, in terms of the implementation, as you said, there's physical, there's technological. Today we're focusing on the technological. Yep. Based on what you've seen, someone did ask a question. That's a good one. What is year 3? You talked about year 1. Year 2.
Sorry, I did. It is absolutely. So year 3 is basically like year 2. So that's what we call surveillance 2, right? You go through it again. And so what that means is you've completed your 3-year cycle. That next audit after your second surveillance, you can expect that to be a recertification. So the whole process starts again. Now, if you've managed the system and you've maintained it and it's a very smooth, nice looking ISMS, fantastic. Your recertification will not be a problem. But if you've struggled your way through all your audits, you can expect that your recert is going to be a little bit harder. Times move on, times do change, technology changes, auditors change what they're looking for. What was good 3 years ago is not necessarily good now for an audit. And don't be fooled by the 2022, year that's on the ISO 27001. It doesn't mean that we're implementing technology from 3 or 4 years ago. It's just that every ISO has a published year, and then it goes through a 5-year and a 10-year review. And so we were up for our ISO 27001 2013 review, which is why we've now got 2022, and that's going to be the one to carry us forward.
Right, because you were telling us don't use AI to look for the controls because that's pulling through the 13 controls.
So that's one of my favorite things to do when I do get self-implementers coming to me saying, oh, we're going to use AI, and they come in and they start referencing controls like 13.44. And I'm like, I can already tell you've used AI, you've got the 2013 standard. This is not going to help you. So just be really careful with that one there, guys. If anyone on the call is thinking that AI is going to do this for you, I'm sure you might figure it out if you really want to do it that way. But yeah, that's a common pitfall that people don't necessarily see straight away.
Nice. And yeah, thanks for the question. So I guess circling back in terms of where we were zooming in now in terms of the technology, based on what you've seen, what are some best practices for MSPs to maintain ISO compliance, both for their own, but also their customers' Microsoft 365 environments?
Yeah, so on the 365 environments perspective, we need to make sure that a lot of the fundamentals are ticked off, okay? So we're always looking for an Intune deployment. It's infinitely easier if you have Intune rolled out, you have corporate devices. Yes, we've got sometimes a mix of MSPs that have BYOD laptops, and that can sometimes be a little bit more work to overcome, because obviously everyone on this call would know you can't control a BYOD laptop unless you're going to be able to tell your staff members, hey, I know you own the thing, but I want to manage it completely. I'm going to encrypt it. I'm going to do all of these things. So it is a pain point. And so one of the best things that I can always say to MSPs is that if you can have an Intune rollout, corporate devices, everyone's enrolled and compliant, you are going to be having a far better time starting this process than not. Okay. And that's a bit of a telltale sign for me. The other one is around obviously MFA, making sure that everyone's got, MFA turned on their Microsoft stack. I would hope to assume that 100% of people on this call have that. So that's kind of a low hanging fruit one. Obviously, your email. But yeah, I know. But let's give everyone the benefit of the doubt. The email side of things, so making sure that we've got our Defender for email, and all of our emails are being scanned, for malicious links and all of that. That's a really important piece as well. And however you're doing that, whether it's through the 365, through Defender, or through another platform of your choice, that's generally what we're looking for. And ultimately making sure that patching is being completed as well on time. So there's a lot more to it, obviously, but just to answer a pretty high level question, 365 related, that's probably what we're looking for.
Okay.
Which is actually good news, because if we're doing things, if you're already using Essential 8, if you're already using CIS, a lot of the 365 controls are already part of that. And so it's not too much of an uplift from the 365 side of things to actually move towards an ISO certification. So that's some good news, that you don't have to, as long as you've got those good practices in place, you're already ahead in that regard from the Microsoft perspective.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just a question from John. In terms of documentation, I'm not sure who this might be a bit of both of you, but in terms of documentation, is the Enforcer portal enough as a document repository, or is it recommended to have your documentation outside of the software? He says, I understand Enforcer can export a JSON, but is there another way to use this for documentation? I guess maybe first to you, Jason.
Yeah, it's a great question. Thanks, John. We look at documentation in two very different lights when it comes to ISO. So we have what we would call your policies and procedures in relation to the ISO framework, and they, in our world, they sit in SharePoint, right? We use the Microsoft stack. We don't put you in separate platforms and all that kind of stuff. Our policies and procedures, we always encourage you to use a platform that you already have in order to do that. However, there's what we call Section 8 in the standard, Clause 8 in the standard, if you want to call it that, which is operations. And that's basically all of your standard operating procedures. They can live in other platforms, okay? That is where I imagine some of the documentation that you're talking about there, John. There's no need to pull that out, replicate it, put it in SharePoint for an auditor, none of that, right? This would fall under Section 8. And whether you're using, an Enforcer for this particular documentation, you might have a mix of an IT glue or a Hoodoo or something like that as well that could potentially be your document store. Well, then that doesn't need to keep, getting replicated and copied across. They stay where they are.
Brilliant. And Nathan, to prove I haven't forgotten about you, I know you and Jason are working on an ISO baseline, like to add to our policy library. But what I've found with all these frameworks is they can be quite open to interpretation. So what are your best practices in terms of building standards for any framework?
Really, I think it's making sure that you've got a good holistic approach to protecting the edge user and protecting the data within an organization. They're sort of really the two big ones. So looking at protecting the identity of your users. So MFA, requiring compliant devices. These days, things like geo-blocking can be so easily contravened. So this is where requiring a compliant device, and which obviously falls in line with the ISO standards around compliance, having that in place is a lot stronger of a protection than actually trying to rely on geo-blocking, which can be just circumvented by, VPNs these days. So protecting the edge, the end user, and protecting the device, the endpoint, and having good controls around your data as well is where we see, that being a really key aspect for that protection point.
Lovely. And in your experience, let's say an MSP's worked with Jason, they've got their ISO controls that they're saying they need to now implement. What's the best practice of actually going through and pushing out those, what I would call policies, onto their internal tenancy?
So basically, using Enforcer is one of the best ways to build out those policies.
I didn't mean to set you up for that, actually, but yeah, thank you.
That was a great setup. But effectively, building out your baseline so that you can have a set of policies and a good repository covering all of the main pillars. So using, frameworks, using Secure Score, all of these different things all build on that framework. So I like to think in line with the Secure Score in that identity, device, data, and applications are really where you want to pivot and have all your policies in place to protect your environment. So looking at, the user, is the user protected? Looking at the device, do you have restrictions in place for macros, for, all of these different controls, even USB storage device blocking for those that want to go down that point, and actually building out your policies in that way so that you can sort of hear that level as well. So some users don't want as much security, and so you have to have your bare minimum that you've picked as your policy set and build that into a separate tenant that's out of the way. And then using a platform like Enforcer, you can deploy all of those policies across all of yourself as well as your customers and have that same tiered approach. So like what Jace was saying before, that when it comes to you wanting to go for ISO certification, you've got that protection and those policies in place, but then so do your customers, so that if they ever want to go on that journey, you've already done some of that work there for yourselves that you can easily replicate. And you can still charge them the same, but effectively you've already done part of the work, and that way you can actually make a bit of extra profit from the hard work you've put in that initial stages.
Thanks, mate. And Jason, on your side, you talked about the different 365 like admin portals with regards to ISO. Why is Intune so important for the ISO side of things?
Yeah, so it plays a massive part in onboarding and offboarding, right? So we obviously care a lot about that. It's one of the biggest issues I raised at the very beginning. But Intune is a really good way to ultimately manage a device in one nice way. Back in the day, the older days, it wasn't possible to do it with Intune. It's a lot friendlier to do. When we're in an audit, we're looking for a nice green, bar of compliant, if we can do that based on all the policies that have been, listed in Intune. And so, look, it's really important. You can manage, obviously, what we have to manage the account characteristics. So things like, how many failed login attempts will lock out an account, and then obviously how long that account is locked out for, even the inactivity lockout. So when you get up and walk away from your computer, how quickly that locks. All of these characteristics, what we call them, all come into play. And so when we have a nice way to manage all of that, and then also a nice auditable way to show that everything is enrolled and compliant, then that makes everybody's lives a lot easier, including obviously the MSP going for their certification.
Beautiful. And you touched on something.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, go on.
The other good thing about Intune is that it's obviously works with Windows, Mac, Linux, iOS, Android, so you can have that full compliance across all of your device spectrum. So if you've been if you do have Macs in some of your customers or in yourselves, you might be using Jamf for other applications or other ways of managing them. Intune can do it all now, and it's quite simple even on the Mac front.
As one of the biggest Microsoft enthusiasts I know, Nathan, why, in your opinion, is it easier to standardize or be compliant to a framework if you're using as much as the Microsoft stack as possible versus, let's say, third-party tools, if you even agree with that?
Yeah, so Secure Score is an interesting one. Obviously, it's very Microsoft centric, and it's really good at making you want to sell more Microsoft products. So framework, I'm a big believer in frameworks. So whether it's E8, CIS, ISO, all of the different frameworks out there, they all work together to achieve the same goal effectively of protecting and securing your environment, whereas Secure Score is only looking at certain aspects. So if you are using, like I'm from an MSP myself before Enforcer, so I know we didn't always use everything Microsoft. We had third-party applications. So if you're using things like, a third-party antivirus, not using Defender, your Secure Score is going to be really poor. So to your customers, it might look like that they're insecure because they're not at that level that they should be. But in actual fact, if you're aligning to a framework like ISO, then you can actually show, hang on, we are compliant, we're fully compliant with this, but we're not necessarily just tied into a Microsoft product, because obviously Defender's great, but there's also lots of other good products out there. So a framework highlights their security posture in a more standardized way. And it doesn't matter what licensing SKU your clients have. It doesn't matter what products they're using, whether they're a full Mac house but still have a Microsoft tenant. If you were just relying on Secure Score, that could also look bad. So it's frameworks allow for a better overall picture of where all of your customers sit.
And pretty much everything we always talk about ends up, it seems like, at reporting, because that's the big thing. It's like, it's not just doing the work, it's proving your value, especially if you're delivering an ongoing service. If you're doing a good job, then people might not even know you're doing anything at all. So Jason, it's nothing to do with Enforcer, but from your side, like, how do you, let's say one of your MSP, their customers is going through an ISO certification, the MSP is helping with that. How do you advise that they report or audit their clients first of all, and then report on the work they're doing?
Yeah, so reports in their truest nature, so like an end of month report or something like that, they are exactly what we're looking for in an audit, right? We need to be able to show, consistent evidence that something is being looked at, managed, etc. So, threat intelligence reports are always something that comes up, and we need to have them handy. But the documentation and the record side of things is always really, really important. And from the client perspective, if you're able to provide your clients with these kind of reports and things like that, you're just making your life in the audit, because ultimately you will always, as the MSP, be called up to represent the client in their audit from the tech side. You're just making your life a lot easier, as well as the audit going a little bit more smoothly. So reporting is super important. I've worked with a lot of great MSPs that even from day one, they're doing all the right things, but they're not necessarily recording everything. And so there's no evidence that X, Y, and Z has taken place. So hopefully that answers that question, Raul, that you were asking. But yeah, reports are huge for us.
And Nathan, at your MSP, or even just when you advise partners, like, how deep in the data do you go? Do you do a summary that's just for tech, for the board? Like, what would you advise on what data to report on?
I think what's important to report on is not just showing that a policy is there in place, because having a policy in place is good, but you actually need to show has it applied to the users? And Intune is great for having that sort of information, and you can pull it into Power BI and build some nice custom reports and things, but actually showing it gives you that breakdown of all the devices. So are the devices, have they been patched? What patch versions are they at? What versions of Microsoft Office are installed? And you can actually comply and show and pull that information in and just show either you could go opt in for a showing everything and show all of the devices, which might be a little bit too much information for, your business stakeholders that you're wanting to show. But in that case, it might be better to just show those that are non-compliant. So there might be 7 or 8 machines in a device, in a company that are out of compliance for that month or that quarter. And then effectively you try and have explanations for it. Maybe they've been offline because the person's on holiday for a month, or these sort of things can be easily explained. But if customers can see not just that you've deployed something, okay, that's great, you've done your job, you've ticked it, but you're actually showing that active monitoring, showing that value in terms of actually going, well, this has changed and this and this and this, and you're going each quarter or each month with something different to showcase, then that really creates that stickiness, because the customers are not just in the dark, they're actively involved and they're on that security journey with you, which shows that, you're helping them move forward in that security space.
What are the most common misconfigurations or blind spots in M365?
I think the big ones have been that we've seen over time, and personally I've seen in my years in the MSP, is MFA was always a big one that could be very easily misconfigured, especially if you were chopping and changing users in and out of groups for going on international trips or having to create exceptions. Many a time I've seen a policy either get deleted by accident or turned into report only by accident, and so no one was actually being protected. And being able to see where that information is a hard one. So being able to report on that, on MFA status, and having that visibility, as well as devices that would just fall out of patching. So if a computer had some sort of glitch on it and it hadn't patched and updated, the user might never know that they're just still working away fine, but their operating system is 1.5 years out of date. And so in the early days of Intune, when things weren't as reliable, that was something I saw very often, and we had to deal with it and had to report on it and have that visibility, because it was a critical aspect of security, but the user wasn't aware. They didn't care that they didn't have to restart every few days. So those two are probably the big ones.
Thanks, mate. Okay. Look, just tying everything together, Jason, on the ISO side of things, can you think of a partner that you helped with ISO and like actual benefits that they saw over the time having implemented ISO? Just to put you on the spot, it's always good to get some, you don't have to name the client, but just some real life examples, always really interesting.
Definitely. There's an easy way to answer this, Raoul, and it's I get 2 types of phone calls, and they happen every week. I get, Jace, it's happened, what do I do, right? And when I say it's happened, it's basically either a number 1 or a top 5 client has requested an ISO certification from the MSP in the next 6 to 12 months. And so that's the what I call the defensive ROI, right? We do this project to defend the work that we've already got, or else, going back to that thing that I said before, where our clients might love us, they might love us, but they might still need to leave us if they can't get insurance and things like that. So that's what we call the defensive ROI. It probably makes up a good 60%, probably pushing 65% of our business. Then we have the ones that are preparing and looking forward. Okay, so whatever the remaining percent is there, they're the ones that don't necessarily have a burning need right now, but they want to play in some areas that they've otherwise not played in before. So they want to be invited to these RFPs and these RFQs. They want to be able to proactively search tender portals and go and put their names in the ring for some of this work. And that is what we call, obviously, the offensive ROI, which is trying to build a business and build an engine based off your ISO certification. I always say that for anyone that comes to me saying, okay, yeah, sure, we'll do ISO 27001, how much is it going to make me? I always say you're going about it you're thinking about it wrong, because it all depends on how good you or your sales team are at selling the thing, right? If we go down the project, we get you certified, fantastic, and you do nothing with it, well, don't expect anything, right? So as far as ROI is concerned, to answer it easily, defensive, we do a lot of protective work where we're keeping existing clients happy and showing them value by doing the projects. And then you've got the ones that are looking to play into a new area. And that's also where, you can start building your business from.
For the new areas where some of the people on this call might have certain verticals they focus on, in your experience, are there any verticals that are opened up more often if
Yeah.
you've got the ISO certification?
Yeah, so we do a lot of non-MSP work, and that is via our channel program. So when we are working with our MSP's clients, right, because we are exclusive to our client base. But the reason I say that is because the typical ones that come through, financial services, professional services, funnily enough, marketing agencies or creative agencies, right, ones that you probably wouldn't think about. These are the ones that are holding a lot of PII, personally identifiable information. Otherwise, even if it's not PII, they're still holding a lot of client data, especially the marketing agencies, funnily enough. But yeah, the financial services, law firms, a lot of your professional services, they are very cluey into what 27001 is. It's being asked by their regulators to make sure that they are either looking at it themselves and then their supply chain's looking at it. So, if you ever see the words, do you have a risk management platform or do you have a risk management system or an information security management system, and you're ticking the box that says, yeah, I've got all of this, ISO 27001 is what they're asking for. That is the translation.
Brilliant. Great answer, mate. Okay. Well, look, just want to give people some time to start firing away some questions. But as a wrap up there, question for both of you, Jason, you first. Like, in terms of a couple of takeaways that you'd hope the audience could take from today, how would you summarize?
A takeaway for the audience: I want to see that percentage of calls that I get drop from being upwards of 50% being it's happened, what do I do? I want to see a more proactive approach from people on the call that believe that this is going to help their business. It's not going to be everybody. I do have a bit of a mission in my mind to see, all of Australia's MSPs achieve this at some point, because there's obviously goals for Australia to become, the most cyber secure place in the world by 2030. We're not going to get there if we're just, twiddling around the edges. Okay. We're going to get there if we all come together and we all do this, holistically and together. So a key takeaway for me would be, don't be scared to talk to somebody like me. It doesn't even have to be me, but have a conversation with someone that knows about this stuff. Figure out how far away you probably actually are. A lot of the time, clients are surprised when they have that conversation and they go, oh yeah, we've got Intune, we've got MFA, we've got this, we've got that. And these are the telltale signs I told you before about that show us the maturity. So if there's one thing to take away, have a conversation, start thinking about what the next 6 to 12 months looks like for you as an MSP and whether or not 27001 is going to factor in.
Thank you. And Nathan, same question.
Yeah, look, I think make sure your security is tight. You understand and know where everything is sitting from that perspective on your 365 tenant side, and just make sure that you can think about, if you don't already have one, think about building a baseline. Think about building a standard of policy sets within your organization, and then obviously you'll need something to distribute it. So whether that's us, hopefully it would be good if you're not already a customer. But yeah, building that baseline and having a set, whether it's documented and you just use it and build it out, but having that baseline of policies that you can easily just deploy that either align to for ISO 27001, any framework. Make sure that that's in place, because it's just going to make your life so much easier when you're trying to help your customers having that framework in place.
All right, great. Well, look, we will be sending a recording round to everyone that joined. We'll also send the transcript, because usually it's a slide deck, but there are no slides. So we'll try and get the transcript to you. Jason's contact details will also be in the email. So get in touch with him if you have any more ISO related questions. But thanks so much for joining. Hope that was useful. Any feedback is always appreciated as well. Next month will be sales best practices for MSPs. So we'll be sending emails around about that. But thanks everyone for joining. Cheers.
Thanks, guys.
We've got a question.
Oh, we do.
Yeah.
Shawantha.
So, yes. So
I think I can answer this one, Nath.
There you go. Yeah, you go for it.
So just to answer that question from Shawantha, which was around if you don't have any servers or data stores yourselves outside of partner platforms, things like that, do we as an MSP need to be certified if we have proper controls and baselines in place? perfect scenario here, guys. So yes, the short answer is it doesn't matter if you've got servers or data stores, or if you are just a 1 or 2 person MSP that is fully cloud. When you say that you have proper controls and baselines in place, your clients cannot verify that. Okay, so just be really mindful that although you know you've got it, your clients don't. So you need that external validation that you have those proper controls and baselines in place.
We've got another one.
Yeah, Daniel, ISO can be quite a significant investment for SMBs. Do you have any advice on presenting it in a way that feels more achievable and approachable for smaller orgs?
Sure, I definitely do. It's why ISO 365 exists, to be honest. If I may, it's been something that I have been trying to change. The significant investment piece. It used to be a whole bunch of money up front. Then you got your auditing fees, and then you get left on your own. Okay, find a partner like ourselves. If you want to actually make it economical, we do ISO as a managed service. So I'm not shy to say that. A lot of people on the call know who we are and what we do for our MSPs. And so we solve that problem from a significant investment perspective. So happy to have a chat and see if it lines up internally.
Great. It sounds like Dino doesn't know that you can use an external ISO business. So the next question is, yes, speak to Jason.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely, Dino. You can definitely use a consultant to help with your ISO. Absolutely.
We've got a nice technical one. Back to BYOD discussion. Can BYOD laptops exist under ISO 27001 if not compliant?
The short answer is yes. I probably need another 40 minutes to explain how. We have MSPs that do have BYOD programs. They need to be mature. They need a lot of finessing from our perspective in order to satisfy an audit. But that is not a disqualifier for 27001. No, you just need to talk to someone that knows what they're talking about.
You would definitely need to look at using like MAM app protection policies for your work-based applications as a starting point. That would be my recommendation. But yeah, definitely would need to consult on that one.
Super. Everyone was really polite, waiting till the end to ask questions.
We almost lost
Tony.
it.
Yeah. Well, thanks a lot, everyone, and goodbye. See you soon.
Thanks everybody.
Guys. See you, everyone. Bye-bye.
See you.